December 1943. In the battered city of Kharkov, deep in the Soviet Union, the Red Army had retaken territory that had been under brutal Nazi occupation for more than 2 years. Amid the ruins of war, the Soviet authorities organized one of the first major public war crimes trials of World War II. The defendants were 3 German soldiers: Captain Wilhelm Langheld of the Wehrmacht, SS Lieutenant Hans Ritz, and Sergeant Reinhard Retzlaff, and a Soviet collaborator, Mikhail Bulanov, who had served the Gestapo. They were accused of atrocities committed during the occupation: massacres, deportations, and acts of terror that had left the civilian population of Kharkov in fear and mourning. These men were not captured in combat. They had been apprehended after the Red Army liberated the city. Investigators collected witness testimonies, documents, and confessions linking the 4 men to systematic killings of civilians, particularly Jews and Soviet prisoners of war. The Kharkov trial would become infamous not only for the scale of the crimes revealed, but for the way justice was carried out in public. Kharkov, prior to the German advance, had been a major industrial and cultural hub in eastern Ukraine. Its capture by the Wehrmacht in October 1941 marked the beginning of an occupation defined by terror. During the occupation, the city was subjected to strict German control. Civilian populations were forced into labor, resources were confiscated, and neighborhoods were terrorized by mobile SS units. Thousands of civilians were executed in shootings or transported to makeshift killing sites, including mobile gas vans and temporary camps. Entire families disappeared, leaving streets and buildings haunted by absence. Witnesses who later testified at the Kharkov trial described scenes of public executions, beatings, and killings in temporary detention centers. Some witnesses had been forced to bury the dead or witness atrocities firsthand. Documents recovered from German offices and Gestapo archives corroborated their accounts, establishing direct links between the accused and specific crimes. Each defendant was given the opportunity to speak. While some admitted involvement, others claimed they were following orders or that they were coerced. Soviet investigators and prosecutors, however, emphasized that obedience to orders did not absolve them of personal responsibility under international law. The tribunal convicted all 4 men of war crimes and crimes against humanity. The sentence was swift and decisive: death by hanging. The Soviet authorities, however, went further. They decided that the execution would be public, carried out in Kharkov's central square before a crowd of civilians. The decision was symbolic. It was intended to provide justice for the victims, act as a deterrent to other collaborators, and allow the city to witness a tangible response to the suffering endured under occupation. On a cold December morning, the city's central square was filled with people. Citizens, many of whom had survived the occupation, gathered to witness the outcome of the trial. Wooden gallows had been erected, and the 4 condemned men were brought out under heavy guard. The crowd observed in silence as Soviet officers read the verdicts aloud one final time. Unlike many executions where prisoners were hooded, these men faced the square openly. There were no attempts to obscure their identities, reinforcing the message that they had been held accountable for specific crimes. Ropes were fastened, and the executioners moved with precision. Within moments, Captain Langheld, Lieutenant Ritz, Sergeant Retzlaff, and Mikhail Bulanov were hanging side by side. Their bodies swayed in the winter wind as witnesses absorbed the finality of the moment. Photographs and newsreel footage captured the scene, ensuring the event would be documented and shared widely. For Kharkov's residents, the public execution served multiple purposes. It was an act of justice for those who had suffered under occupation. It was also intended as a warning: collaboration with occupying forces or participation in mass killings would result in immediate and visible consequences. The Kharkov trial was significant for several reasons. It demonstrated that civilians and military personnel alike could be held responsible for war crimes. It also illustrated the Soviet approach to post-war justice, which emphasized both punishment and public demonstration. The trial and execution provided an early example of how international law could be applied to individuals accused of crimes against humanity. While the Geneva Conventions were not fully codified in their modern form, the Soviets argued that the principles of protecting civilians and prisoners of war had been violated. The case established a precedent for future trials of German soldiers, collaborators, and other civilians who participated in atrocities. Beyond the legal implications, the Kharkov trial served a psychological and societal function. Public executions were intended to restore a sense of justice to traumatized populations and reinforce the authority of Soviet governance in liberated territories. The immediate and visible nature of the punishment sent a clear signal to remaining collaborators and occupiers. Acts of violence against civilians and prisoners would not go unpunished.